Hello and welcome to I felt like I shouted that for everyone.
Hello.
Right, let's try again. Hello and welcome to the Little Minds Big Ideas podcast with the Early Years Network. Ben is back in the studio.
I'm back.
I think everyone liked Lucy last week though. So
I feel like I was close to losing my job.
Nearly lost your seat.
But I think
It's safe, you're okay.
I'm all right.
But I probably will get Lucy back.
If she continues to be that popular, no. But she needs to come on and sing the song, so at some point.
We do need to get that. I'm going to get my little helpers as well.
To give you a little sing
To help me with that, singing the song, yeah.
Okay. That will be up on socials.
It will be up on socials. It's actually just when they're both in the setting at the same time.
We're not having them.
Different days.
I'm not having them two back on the set for a while.
No, we'll go into the setting to do that. To do their good morning song for everybody.
Though it's funny though, because every time you go down to see them, they're like little superstars.
I'm going to do a podcast. No. Carnage. Bless it. No, do love them. This week we are going to be talking all about observations because there's kind of two sides to observations, isn't there? You either love them or you hate them. And I think it's quite nice to throw our bets in about it.
Yeah. I was about to dive into it then, but I'll hold back. I'm learning. I'm getting better at this podcast, Paul Huck.
And actually, we've got a class going up on the website this month or beginning of next, not sure what the schedule is, by Lucy, all about the different types of observations and how you can use them in practice. So we thought before that comes out, it'll
be this month. The post is going up next week about what's coming out this month, and then the content will drip next week and the week after.
There you go. You heard it here first.
And I'm not sure how many classes yet. It could be quite a big week, big month this month.
Yeah.
I've got
one sat there. You've got one sat there.
I might have another one done by the time. So there could be 5, I might say. 5 this month.
Okay. Get over to the earlyearsnetwork.co.uk. Don't miss them.
Don't miss out.
We thought we'd just jump in on observations and have a chat about our opinions on them.
What about our exciting news?
About
where we're going?
We are heading to the London Olympia
for
the Childcare and Education Expo.
You struggle with that so much.
I really do. I don't know why. On Friday the 1st and Saturday the 2nd of March, we'll be there, stand B20.
B20. Do you know what? I've said B20 everywhere. I'm fairly sure it is, but imagine if it's not.
Well, whoever's on B20 is going to hopefully get a load of people. We're like, no, it's us. We've got the whole gang going down. Really excited.
There'll be 7
of us, in our green, black or navy hoodies.
Yeah, we've got a right assortment, or white T-shirts who've find us.
We'll all have the network logo on, so hopefully you won't miss us. We're really looking forward to this, aren't we?
We've got a few goodies, a few special treats. It'll be worth swinging by and saying hello. If not, just to chat to us and
come and say hello.
See us in the flesh, but also an opportunity to get your hands on some bits and bobs.
Yeah, are we going to announce what's in the hampers?
We could talk about it. I don't mind talking about it. It's not a secret.
We're kind of creating a co-regulation wellbeing early years hamper for both adult and child.
Using some of the bits as well from some of our lovely collaborators on the network. So obviously we've got Ben Kingston Hughes' course up on the website, and we will have his latest book, it's not a very unusual journey into joy. It's about joy.
Yeah, I can't remember the actual title. We've got the first one here.
We have. So that will go into there, and there'll be some Molly Potter books because we have a Molly Potter on the website talking about emotional intelligence.
And then we have some other little goodies that we think will support in settings with emotional intelligence, regulation, etc., etc. And then some goodies for adults.
There's some of those cool little...
You're going to tell them everything. Oh, Colour Monster. Yeah, we have a set of Colour Monster in each hamper. So definitely get yourselves down to the stand because we will be running a competition on the day. Mm-hmm. If you could enter for free and win a basket of goodies.
Absolutely. So,
excited.
It'd be nice to actually, because we went to the manager's show, didn't we?
We did.
But we didn't have a stand and we were sort of just there, just perusing. Whereas this time it'd be nice to actually have a stand and sort of get an opportunity to meet everyone.
Talk about the project and show it off because people maybe don't really understand what it is or what it looks like and what the platform does and how it can help your setting. So it'd be really good to show that to people in the flesh.
Yeah, and it'd be lovely just to meet. We have got a lot of listeners, so it'd be nice to
actually,
because we just sit in this room with a camera and a microphone, so it'd be actually quite nice to put some I would say put names to faces. We don't even have names.
They can put faces to faces.
Face to faces.
So yeah, definitely if you're there, come and say hello. It's really nice to meet people.
And if you aren't doing anything on the 1st and 2nd of March, then maybe think about swinging by.
Get down to London.
Absolutely.
Always good fun. And we are treating ourselves a couple of days before because it's my birthday.
We're setting up on your birthday, aren't we?
No, we're setting up the day after my birthday. We're setting up on the 29th.
Oh, no, I thought we were setting up on your birthday.
No.
Okay, well then we are going down.
We have celebrated a few of my birthdays together. Ben still hasn't. Still confused on the date.
I haven't put dates together yet with the event. It's just that I know I have to turn up there and get everything ready.
So we are going to treat ourselves a few days before. So it'll be a lovely birthday weekend for me to spend it with everybody at the expo.
It will.
So yeah.
Right, observations. Let's get into it.
Let's jump into it. There you go. That's our plug on the expo done. We can jump into the podcast, the meat of it.
The meat.
So observations. I think there's sometimes an air of negativity around observations, and I don't really understand as to why.
Yeah, I think...
Is it the knowledge behind what an observation is, why it's so important, the purpose of them, things like that?
Do you know what I think and where it stems from? Remember I don't know which podcast it was now, we sat and we spoke about historically observations and assessments. I think it was
the EYFS changes video.
That was it. And we talked about how, and I think it gets a bad rap because of the amount of paperwork that was introduced. And we said it almost became an industry of itself. It sort of felt like it took over. These companies appeared selling you sheets and assessment documentation and all this bits and pieces all around creating observations and frameworks and cohort tracking and assessment tracking and all this jazz. And it just went from 0 to 100 within the space of a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think from that then the stigma came around observations, that it was then closely linked with paperwork. And that's quite dangerous, I think, because I think observations are the most powerful tool we have, I almost want to say, along with building relationships and things like that. I think observations are crucial because, and when I talk about observations, I'm not just talking about sitting down, comparing a child's development and learning progress versus some learning goals in the EYFS. I'm talking about actually getting to the root cause of the why behind certain things. And that can be anything from a holistic development point of view. It's the why behind children's play. We could talk about schemas. We can talk about children's interest. We can talk about loads of things. And then that then orchestrates our actions and our interventions and our environments. We could talk about behaviour. We could talk about examining children's patterns of play, patterns of behaviour, to then figure out what their emotional triggers are. You know, what is it in our environment, or what is it in our routines, or what is it in the day that triggers that child? Again, it all comes down to this being observant and observations. And you don't always have to write it down, but we work in teams, and writing things down makes information and communication an easier process.
Yeah.
But there's no right or wrong way of doing things. There's just doing it to your best of your ability to help that child. And if the best of your ability is that actually I'm just going to note take, and then I can remember a lot of it because I can remember that child, but I'm going to write what I need to write to share and cascade that information across my team, because I might not always be there. Or, do you know what I mean? Things happen. So if you go on holiday and all the information's in your head and you go away for 2 weeks, and that child is set up to have an awful couple of weeks because no one else quite understands his triggers like you do, etc., etc. We can jump into this as the podcast goes on, but I think that's where that negative stigma potentially stems from.
I think as well, I think is what you're right in saying, that it's the amount of observations. But then I don't know if when people join the industry, we are selling it as, oh, you've got all this to do by this date, blah, blah. Actually, like you said, if we can sell observations in a way that's actually going to enhance your learning environment, because you will be able to observe what children enjoy, they don't enjoy, what works well, what's been causing accidents. You do that without even realizing that you are observing your environment. You can observe the way children's patterns of behaviours throughout the day go, because if you are realizing that actually at the height of transition times, just because you've not written that down as a formal observation, you have observed that transitions can be tricky.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do to reflect on that?
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about reflective practice in this, because that's such an important part of observations, is reflecting.
So if we go back to then this idea that they're often met with a negative stigma, do you think when people come into the industry new, do you think we do a good enough job at explaining?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think we teach people why observations are important, because I don't think we always understand why they are important. And I don't know if it's because we went from having to do so many observations. I remember at one point I was doing 2 a week on every key child. Yeah. And you got to the point where you're pulling at strings to be like, what else can I write in a snapshot about this child?
Yeah, I think
child A walked up the stairs, great, tick, done.
I think often then you get observations intrinsically become linked with the sort of arduous motion of ticking children's development against a tick list box, a criteria box of, or have witnessed them walking up the stairs, tick that off the box, write an observation about little Henry, used the handrail and walked up the stairs, right, done, Henry's mastered the stairs. Like, it becomes intrinsically linked with that, whereas realistically, it's about zooming out and taking that bigger picture, that holistic view of that child.
Well, you stood with Rachel the other day, who was finding, Rachel is one of our managers.
She has popped up on the network.
You'll see her podcast. She's at the expo. You'll see her face. But she was really finding a child's behaviour quite challenging for her personally. She has got the enough experience to actually stand back and say, I need somebody else to take over and help here, because the child wasn't purposefully meaning to single Rachel out, but Rachel just found that behaviour just a little bit challenging that day. But the two of you stood back and you observed him for probably about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that. And you picked up on things that Rachel hadn't seen because she was so in it. Whereas you were like, and like you say, you've zoomed out and you've looked at the bigger picture. Now, for me, that 5-minute observation should be written down, passed on to the entire team. What are we going to do now, looking at this observation on this child, to support him moving forward? Now, in terms of his behaviour, it wasn't actually that he wasn't hitting anybody, wasn't hurting anybody. It wasn't anything like that. It was just destructiveness, I would say.
Yeah, because there was a group of children when they sat on the floor playing with, let's say, Lego. I can't remember what they were.
I think it was Lego,
some form of Lego, building blocks, wasn't it? And there must have been about 7 of them around the tough tray where it was being held in, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they were all really
focused and doing their own thing. And
their own thing.
And he came across and just started annihilating it, didn't he? Kicking it in left, right and centre. And then immediately all the other children, without it, I think one child pretended to shoot him, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
But the rest of them just almost accepted it and walked off, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then he just carried on playing with his cars in his own
world. He used the Lego to build his own train, and then he played with them his own thing. So it was like it was, from our point of view, it looked like he wasn't sure how to join anybody's play. So to get everybody away, then he could play.
A lot of people sometimes think I'm crazy when I say it, but a lot of children need to learn how to play.
Yeah.
Or
play with others.
Well, that's the thing. There's different forms of play. So watching him, he's very good at, and his concentration levels hit an all-time high. And from what Rachel said, confirmed that when he is in his own bubble, he's in his own world, his imaginary play, he manages to take himself off and he's very concentrated and fixed on that. When it then comes to playing with other children and that form of play, he looks like he really struggles to engage. And that's why I said, for me, that observation would be written down, and my next steps, what I would then focus on in that room would be for practitioners to slowly begin to join his play. And the word join is the key part of that there, because it's not about taking over. It's not about changing his play or adopting it. It's purely just sitting with him at first. Because at first he might reject it. And then the second time he might reject it. And the third time you might not get anything from him. You might think, well, it's just absolutely pointless. But by the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th time, you might actually start joining in his play. And then by that point, you might start learning some of the skills that he needs then to engage with other children.
Yeah.
And then after a while, the other children might not just see him as someone who's going to disrupt and ruin their play, but they might start embracing him then.
But he might also understand that he can join others' play and it's not going to be a negative.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've gone on a tangent about this one observation, but I think what I'm trying to say is that from those 5 minutes, you were able to pull out so many things that in the moment, on the day, Rachel wasn't, because she was so absorbed in it.
And we might be wrong.
What could be completely wrong?
But that's good. You know, sometimes being wrong is a good thing because you're working through a process. You're trying to fit a puzzle together. Children are really, really complex in terms of what's going on, brain development. They can't communicate clearly because they haven't quite got the literature yet. They haven't got the language for it. So it can be a really difficult thing to piece the puzzle together of every individual child. And that's, for me, what observations are all about. It's about building a picture and expanding this puzzle, if you like. It's not about looking at minute things what are against a tick list and just writing it for the sake of writing it. Because if that's what you're doing, if you're collecting observations that then they're filed away, sat in a drawer, go onto a computer system, whatever you might have to store observations, and then nobody is ever engaging with those observations ever again, then what you're doing is a waste of time. Unfortunately, that is what it is.
And actually, leading on from that, I had an interesting conversation with another manager who was struggling with a child who's transitioning from one room to another, and the room he's going into said, I don't know enough about this child. So Olivia's first question was, well, have you read his most recent observations and assessment?
Yep.
Because she said to me, if that's the first point of call, I'm going to learn a lot from his learning styles, where he's at, etc., etc. And I said, it's spot on, because actually, otherwise, the key worker's written these lovely observations and learned the way he's doing things or whatever it might look like. And then he's going to a new room in a new environment. And yes, you could do transition document and you can talk about his comforters and you can do all these things. But actually reading those observations is going to give you a more holistic view on how that child learns. But it has to ensure that those observations aren't just a sentence and a tick list.
Yeah.
Those observations need to be a story in themselves around that moment. And I think that's really important, that when children are transitioning, observations and assessments are part of that transition, because without them, somebody has to remember what's happened a month ago, a week ago, 3 months ago, whatever it looks like. When if you've managed to write that down, and I'm not saying people need to write things down all the time. I think as part of our cycle, it works out as 1 a month, but it's 4 across the term.
Yeah.
So it's
assessments.
4 observations across the term,
right.
An assessment every term.
That feeds into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But come on, you read the cycle. But I think it's important to understand that actually tying yourself down to even 1 a month, you might have a child who has joined your environment and is really struggling to settle. You're not going to get a lot straight away. And I think that's really important. So having those guidelines in place, but also being flexible with them, is really important when you focus on observation, because children will do things at different times. So like I said, me trying to write 2 a week on my key children was really tricky, especially if some of them only came into the setting 1 time a week.
Yeah.
You've got to get 2 in 1 day.
And then you're manufacturing something, like I said, for no purpose.
Yeah, falsifying things. You're trying to find things that aren't there. Whereas if observations are naturally within what you're doing, you can start to enjoy them because you're seeing the difference.
And that's why I remember, I think about 5 years ago now, we reshaped all of our observations and assessment, didn't we? Because I remember sitting down with the nursery managers.
It wasn't that long ago. It was 3 years.
3-4 years ago. I remember sitting down with the nursery managers and looking at children and looking at what they were collecting from an assessment and observation point of view. And when you saw the children in the room and then you saw what was written down, it didn't make any sense. Right. We were ticking children off willy-nilly, writing observations about them. And then when you actually watch these children, they were nothing alike. They were completely different human beings. So that's because they have seen them, witnessed these children do something once, twice maybe. And then ticked it off and then developed. We were sending children to university, not primary school, by the end of their stay with us. And it's about, if we're doing something and there's no practical reason for it, we're not utilising that information that we're gaining. We're not, do you know what I mean? There's no way, we're doing something for the sake of doing it. What's the point of doing it? Exactly. So in reality, I'd applaud anybody to look at what they're doing and analyse what they're doing. Many people watching this will probably be absolutely whizzes at it and I'm fine, cool, carry on. But many people will still be doing things because that's just how we've always done it. That's just, that is what we do. And I hate observations because it's a pain in the arse and I spend most of my time just writing on a tablet for the sake of writing on a tablet. Yeah. And then no one ever looks at what I'm writing ever again. Maybe mum will look at it and then think, oh, it's nice. And then boom, it's forgotten about. That's not purposeful. No. And that's either because what you're doing is for the sake of it, or we're not actually embracing the observation and the
what
meaning
they are
behind it.
and how they can impact a child's learning. Because if you're observing a child do something over and over and over again, what's your next step? It's not necessarily the child's next step, but what are you going to do then to scaffold that and take it further? And sometimes I think the next steps that come from our observations and assessments, it's about, the child needs to regulate their emotions. Brilliant. Okay, what's your next step? How are you going to get them there? Because actually, I do understand why children have next steps, because there is milestones that you want them to hit, etc. But you should also have next steps for yourselves and how you're going to adapt your practice, environment, routine, etc. to help them achieve that next goal.
And my class that comes out this month on co-regulation really delves into it's our responsibility. I mean, when you read the ELGs and stuff around self-regulation, it's not far off from being a joke, if I'm completely honest, because it makes it sound as if the children are responsible for their own self-regulatory development, which, when you think about it, it goes against science. It's chaotic. It's like saying a child has to learn language in a quiet room. Do you know what I mean?
Silence, pick up the English dictionary and learn it.
Learn English language without ever talking to anyone, and then by the time you're 5, I expect you to be able to talk fluently and engage with me. It's nonsensical.
I think it's something that I have observed for years and years is that a lot of people struggle with 2-year-olds. My personal favourite age, bloody love it. I love a 2's room. But some people really struggle with it because, and this is something we've kind of discussed, and I do want to create a class on this, because I think in a baby room, we're all about nurture. We're all about caring. At that baby age, we're all about relationships and building those relationships, giving giving comfort, and doing all these things. And in preschool, we're all about school readiness, and we're all about independence, and we're all about you can do this and have conversations, and you push them to that next level, and it's all academic, blah, blah.
Shouldn't be, but yeah.
No, it shouldn't be. But in terms of, in a way it is, because the activities you're providing children do have that academic twist. You're able to scaffold them in a way to provide literacy and numeracy skills without sitting them down and doing.
It's the term school readiness that makes me shudder.
We'll get into that on a different day. But from my observation, in the 2's room, they're expected to get ready for that preschool age with no help from what they've got in the baby room. So all of those attachments and skills they've learnt to build with people, well, no, you're 2 now. You should be independent. You should be... Poor child used to having so many cuddles to regulate themselves, goes into a 2 environment and should be expected to do it all by themselves, and they should know how to put the shoes on, and they should know how to do the coats and all these other things. And then they're thinking, what the fuck is going on? 5 minutes ago, I was next door with my key worker having a cuddle, regulating my emotions. In 12 months' time, I've got to go in that room where they expect me to do everything by myself. And I'm in this room thinking, somebody help me.
Yeah.
Then we deal with 2-year-olds' behaviours, and the observations are, they don't listen, they run around, they don't want to do this, they're too Jesus Christ, give these 2-year-olds a break. And I always say in a 2's room, you need to observe the individual child, because actually what worked for your last group of 2-year-olds is not going to work for this one. It might, but 9 times out of 10, it's not. And I think it's through observations we learn that every child is different and every child needs something different. But in a 2-year-old room, why is it that they're expected to know so much straight away? So through your observation, surely you should be thinking, right, this child has just come into my room. Has anybody taught them how to put their shoes on?
Yeah.
Or are we just expecting now that they're 2, there's a brain click that's gone, shoes.
I mean,
I get it. Thank you.
From a toddler 2's room point of view, your assessments and everything you do really need to be geared towards developing self-regulation through co-regulation and independence.
Yeah.
They're the 2 foundational pieces.
But I think it's learning ourselves as well and observing that they don't just know it. It doesn't just happen. I helped a child in a 2's room yesterday put their shoes on, and nobody said anything. Like, he'd just woken up from his sleep and I was helping him. So we helped put the shoe on the first bit of his foot, and we were saying, push, push. So he understood that he has to push his foot into the shoe. Now, if anybody had never told him that, he'd be flopping around with this shoe, like, well, how do I put my foot in?
Yeah.
So we talked through the motion, but there is this expectation that 2-year-olds know everything, and through observation on them, you learn that they don't. No. And I don't know if I've just picked that up over the years and years and years that I've worked with 2-year-olds, but they don't. And every 2-year-old that I've observed observed moving into a twos room need that support still.
I think when you said earlier, we've really got off topic here, but you said earlier that people quite often shy away from the twos room or don't, it's not their favourite. It's because but that age group they're physically developed beyond a baby in the sense that they've started to develop motor skills not far off preschool by the end of it. Like they're physically grown, they can move, they can cause destruction.
So sorry, I went off on a tangent.
You can do those things. And then you've got the delay in the front cortex development. So they're very much still aligned with the amygdala responses, that emotional impulse, that emotional response. That's why it's challenging, because you've got a preschool almost in physicalness, not quite, but more than a baby.
Yeah.
And you've got the very raw, unnurtured, underdeveloped front cognitive processing ability. And that's why it's difficult.
Yeah, but I think when you think about observing those children, it's really, really crucial. And if you're just creating a tick list, it's not going to do anything. Yeah. So that's why I think observations need to be detailed and a little
meaningful.
Bit more. Yeah. We have gone off topic. I do apologise. But the next thing I kind of wanted to touch on was like developing...
I love going off topic. I love the chaos. The chaos of the podcast.
To stand up for the 2-year-olds. I feel like I do a lot. I love a 2-year-old. I think this I think is the best age. But anyway, so developing your observation skills only happens by doing it.
Yeah.
The more you do observations and the more that you are part of that process, you're going to learn it. And that's where reflective practice comes in, because you reflect on what you're doing and how you're observing children. Yeah.
And I think the interesting one, we always talk about observations, and when we talk about the types of observations, and we talk about, we always just think of observation in play. I think most of the time is the common reference to, because I think sometimes when we used to compare them, and we go back to the tick listing observation format, you force a child into something and you coerce them into by walking up the stairs, or whether it be writing or something, you force them, it's very adult led. When in reality, you want to create environments and test children within certain circumstances to see what they're like.
Yeah.
So you could break observations down and think, right, I'm going to get an observation of this child in play, or play with other children, or I'm going to get this child in an observation mid-routine. You know, how do they transition across routines, and how do our routines suit this child? Because you'll often find it is the routines when a child is likely to become deregulated. It's their moment in time, especially if your routines aren't locked in and stable. You'll start to find potential, you know, if a child's becoming deregulated at any moment in time, that would be for me the time to cue into and observe them based upon that trigger.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. It's always, for me, observations should be so centered around the why. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're looking at the why of something happening. It's that trigger moment. It's that trigger point in time, whether that be then, like I say, through play, through movement, transition across the room in a certain environment. Is it an environmental led trigger? Is it noise? Have they just been trapped inside all day? Is it the lighting within that room? Because we can then talk about, you know, that horrible office lighting, that tube lighting you see in so many settings, in schools especially, that can really mess up your rhythm, your cycle. Your understanding, your body clock works on light and natural light. It's your circadian rhythm. Have I completely made that word up? It's that within you that helps develop and cycle your brain. So you understand when it's time to sleep, you understand when it's time to eat.
Yeah.
It gives you that pattern. So I would really focus on always thinking when you're writing observations, the why.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're looking for. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the time, we talked about that child earlier, that incident where we observed. You've got to make sure with your observations, and when you're looking and thinking about the why, we're not just focusing on the children that take up our time because they are the boisterous children. They are the ones that cause us the most angst. It's those, sometimes the quieter children, of they may just naturally be quite withdrawn, but it's about investigating the why behind their withdrawal. Is it just because that's what they are? Is it just because that's the type of person they are? Or is it because they are withdrawn because the reasoning behind the withdrawal? That could be anything. You know, we're now getting into the idea of it being hyperarousal and the child withdrawing into themselves. There might be something behind that. So again, it's about exploring that and engaging with that.
Talking about the different types of observations, so I did double check with Lucy about which observations she kind of went over in that class.
Yeah.
And she covered all of the observations that are
What are you going to say? She covered all of them.
No, all the observations that appear in the level 3 qualification.
Makes
so if
sense.
you are doing your level 3 qualification, that class is going to talk you through all the ones that they talk about. She mentioned narrative observations, snapshot observations, recording, event sampling, time sampling. I think there's a couple more. But yeah, it's not things you do every day, different types of observations, but it is interesting to learn about the different types that are of an option to do. So yeah, Lucy does go through all of those. So I don't think we need to
harp onto
all of them.
Okay.
I don't know. We kind of covered the challenges and strategies that come with it. You have to work as a team when trying to formalise your observations and making them sort of like in the system that you do, whether it's an online system or a book or however you make them available to parents. You have to work as a team because your notes are fantastic, but like you say, you've got to get them down somewhere. And a lot of places you don't get time out of the room to do that. It's not like in a school where they get PPA time to collate information and things, but you have to work together.
I think finding the time to have team meetings around observations is really important because it gives you that moment in time, that opportunity.
Okay, you've gone on something different. Go on.
Oh, go on, carry on. What were you saying?
I was saying during the day-to-day, finding the time to write those observations up and formalise them properly. Yeah. So you've got to think about those quieter periods. We've got children that are sleeping and you're in a sleep room. Can you use that time productively to write your observations up? But then it's sharing that time because you've got preschool who don't sleep, 9 times out of 10 won't sleep. So are you working as a team across a building to share staff and support each other? So I think that's really important because observations for everyone are important. And if you're covering in a room, there's no reason why you can't get an observation on a child.
You might get a better observation than most people consistently in that room because, like we said earlier, you are zoomed out. You've not got a non-biased opinion on it. Yeah. And whenever I go in a room, I do try to get an observation on a child at minimum because, like you said, it's a different view. And I think that's really important because supporting people is crucial and reflecting on what you're doing and what others are doing is really important. And it is a challenge. Not being able to get out of the room to do observations is... I mean, that's an interesting point because on my class on co-reg, we delve into the work, I dive into the work of Dr. Stuart Shanker, who has done loads of scientific work on regulation within children. And one of his 5 R's that he breaks down to talk about regulation, how we can support children with regulation, it talks about having non-bias when it comes to examining children and not bringing a bias. And what that can often mean is when we label children as the naughty child, when that child picks up a tag or a label, we know it's wrong, but it happens. And even if they don't get tagged it out loud, our heads and our minds, it happens. We do internalize these thoughts and we work with these children every day. So we become familiar with them and you develop biases. And when I say bias, it's not the generic term of biases in like, I prefer that child over that child. It means we develop a fundamental view. We have our biases of our opinions and our thoughts. And when you're doing observations and you're assessing children and you're working towards things, it's so important that we can clear them out.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just think that child's doing it because he wants to be a pain in the bum. That isn't true. Like, let's rid that. Let's get away from that and let's analyze and view that child. And like I always go back to the why and the triggers. It's about analyzing the things that occur to get to that moment in time, that final output. What's building towards that output? What is it during the day, during the child's life? What's happened to them? What is that point? Because if we can get there, that we can put things in place to help release that stress and that anxiety or whatever is causing that behaviour.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And that's a really important step. And I think one of the other aspects we got onto and we talked about was when we were talking about, or I was talking about the idea around... Sorry, I thought somebody was walking in.
So did I. Hello. Might come back to you.
Yeah, okay. Move on.
Never mind.
That was weird.
The next one I think which is quite important.
Organisation. Sorry. It's come back to my brain.
Back in the room.
The organisation of the day. So if we're struggling to get observations done and we're struggling to get these elements done, it's about thinking, well, what is our day like? Is there periods in time where we're not actually that productive? What does it look like? And it's about analysing and trying to become as productive as we are.
That's where your reflective practice comes in.
And that's where those elements come into. And like you said earlier, it's about working in a team, because if you've got the opportunity to relieve someone else to go do something, for example, if you're as a baby room have got a period in the time when you're sat with the babies upstairs asleep, and preschool are really up against it and struggling to find that time, as a team, let's think about how we can work together and little assets like that.
Yeah, exactly. Another really important part of observations is including families, including parents and carers into your observations, and encouraging them to do observations at home too, in whatever way they share that with you.
Home observations are so important though.
So important, because even though it's not, the parents might not have a knowledge on the EYFS or 7 areas of learning or whatever.
And we'll have strong biases like we just talked about.
Yeah, but they will be able to give you an insight into what the child does at home, what they enjoy, their interest, even if it is just that the child is really interested in the Gruffalo at the moment. We went for a Gruffalo hunt at the weekend. Yep. Brilliant. If that child's struggling to settle with me, I know that the Gruffalo is something they're really interested in. Let me bring that into the setting a little bit more.
Or they never stop talking at home, but then they get to the nursery and they're showing signs of hyperarousal and they're very quiet.
Yeah.
Interesting again.
Yeah. It's just all those things, and encouraging parents and teaching parents why those observations are really important, because you can learn a lot about a child through observations at home. And
it's a great opportunity to educate parents through to give them information about what we're doing, why we're doing it, what we're looking at when we're observing children through those observations.
Yeah, exactly. So I think collaboration with families is really important, and it builds up your parent partnership. It builds up those conversations. It builds up your relationship about how much you know their child. The one thing that you learn in early years and they teach you is that nobody knows a child better than the parent does.
Yeah.
Even though it feels like sometimes the child is at setting more than they're at home, but actually, at the end of the day, the parent knows their child best. And so you need to have a fantastic relationship with them, with joint observations from setting or childminder, whatever that looks like, and home, to be able to build that relationship further. And at the end of the day, we're all here for the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
You'd like to hope anyway. So I think it's best that we work as a team inside the setting and outside to bring ideas together to push forward for the best for that child. And if that's not your sole purpose, then you need to evaluate what it is that you're doing within this industry. Because at the end of the day, we should all be here for the needs of the children and what's best for them as individuals.
One thing we haven't spoke about or considered is when we talk about different forms of observation, people can often struggle with writing them. Because it's always written. And so if you're dyslexic or you have a barrier of entry there, it's probably about recognising that as a team and supporting someone.
There's also different ways of doing it. You can, if you talk into most smartphones, it will record it for you.
You then got the issue around having a smartphone in the setting, I guess, haven't you?
No, but if you've got a nursery phone or a tablet, 9 times out of 10, even the tablets, you can.
We used to have a member of staff. What do they use?
That was an app on the iPad.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember what it's called. It's quite a popular app, isn't it?
That would just help her to write the observations and assessments, and
Because you can't write or you struggle with written word, the observations that you come up with will still be absolutely vital.
Or you get a voice recorder and you record exactly what you're watching, and then another member of staff can help you type that up for you.
I mean, you can use apps these days and online that will just transcribe it for you.
Yeah.
Record it on TikTok and then put the captions on.
No, I just mean a voice recorder. If you're in the room and you're observing a child, you can talk about it really quickly into this microphone.
Yeah. I think if we're talking about barriers to entry for observations, it is things like that, though. If you're dyslexic, struggle to find time, blah, 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 blah. There's plenty of barriers to it when it comes to working as a team.
Yeah, I think it's, if that is you, not being shy about that, like it's okay. It's like that shouldn't create that barrier for you to write observations and observe. Your team should support you. If you just need a little bit longer to write observations, your team should be able to factor that in for you. So I think it's being open and honest, and fingers crossed you're in a supportive team that understands that and will help you to achieve that goal. Because just because you struggle with I'm not the best at forming sentences. I'll write things and Ben will go, can I just reword that? Like
TikTok's Emily's worst.
I never put the captions on.
TikTok's your enemy.
Yeah.
Because TikTok doesn't have autocorrect. So if you spell something wrong, it just sits there wrong.
Sits there. Stupid app. But I now write things on notes and copy and paste it. But I think it's important to have people that understand that. So like when I've got an idea and the content is there, but the sentence structure is not quite right, Ben will be like, can I just tweak that? Like, you've got the information, but let's word it in a different way. So I think it's having having the confidence to be like, this is my weakness.
Do you want to talk about
support it with me?
Do you want to talk about the person who beefed you over the idea of reflective practice?
I actually wanted to do a podcast on reflective practice and peer on peer. So this was more about observations on children.
Okay, so we're not going to talk about your...
To me, I think you took the hump about it a little bit more than I did. I was trying to find the response that was diplomatic, but you did that for me and jumped in. But that's a different podcast for a different...
Okay, we'll save that.
Practice. Yeah.
We'll save that tea for later.
We can do that in a different episode. But I think reflective practice and observations on each other is really important in our industry, but we will get into that another day. I think this was just about children's observations and observations on learning.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Are you sure?
Fine. I'll save it.
I think that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
Observations on children are important. I know we no longer in England have to give physical evidence of that, but from my point of view, I think they're important. I think they help us keep on track. I think they help us to be accountable for children's learning and move forward and develop ourselves, our environment and children even further. So it's not something I would ever want to stop doing.
Yeah, and I know we're all different, but again, if it was me and I'm leading a room, I want our observations and assessments to be real, living and breathing things. I think that's my biggest, and I want everybody to be focused on the why. So for every child, when I'm looking through observations, I want the why. What is it? What is the most common trait of this child? What is the most common aspect of their development?
What are they learning?
And then from that, what's the why? How can we help them? Not what are they struggling with most, but we know we can pick every single child and we can analyse them and go, right, whether it be holistically across the board, we can look at behavioural, cognitive, educational, physical, like all of these elements, and there'll be something there that we need to work on.
Yeah, there will be.
And then it's about the why. Tell me the why behind that child. What are you thinking at this very moment in time? That's your observation. And then from that, we'll do something and we'll intervene, we'll change our environment, we'll restructure something. And then from that again, we'll observe. Right, okay, again, what's the why? Have we cracked it? Do we move on to something else? Have we not cracked it? Like, what is going on? And I want team meetings around that. I want discussion points around that. I want it to be living and breathing and talked about. I don't want tick list. Oh, I saw little Jimmy hold a pencil yesterday. Oh, fantastic. Great. Cracking. What are you going to do with that information?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that was our 2 pence about it all.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
You happy with that?
I'm happy with that. You happy with that?
Okay. Well, hopefully it's been informative and helpful in some way.
So I think it's something to share with your teams as well. If you're the only person listening to this podcast, ask them why they're not. Oh,
I didn't put my phone on silent.
Rookie mistake. God, the people I work with, I tell you.
Get rid of me and bring Lucy back.
Yeah, where's Lucy?
Didn't have any of these troubles with Lucy.
No, I didn't. But yeah, that's it from us, I think.
Yep.
That's it. Your Monday has begun with us, hopefully.
Yep. Have a good week.
Have a fabulous week. I'm hoping we're celebrating a Super Bowl win.
Yeah. Let's go Niners.
Let's go Niners.
Bang, bang, Niner. Everybody, our demographic of people listening to this podcast
don't care about the Super Bowl.
Probably don't care. Furthest removed from the Super Bowl.
There might be a couple of people that think, I've heard about that because of Taylor Swift.
I hope so.
Yeah,
but she's on the wrong side.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Taylor Swift is the enemy in this.
Only for Sunday, and then we carry on loving Taylor Swift.
I don't know. It depends how Sunday goes. Might have to burn her at a stake.
Don't sacrifice Taylor Swift.
I probably can't say that on a podcast. I don't want to go with Swifties.
No, maybe cut that bit out.
I think we just got cancelled.
Yeah. But yeah, so have a fabulous week. I hope this podcast's been informative.
Any questions, find us on socials, drop us a message.
Yeah, we're hearing everyone's opinions in the comments, so it's really interesting to hear.
Unless you're beefing us. In case I'm coming for you.
And I will get the Good Morning song filmed with the girls.
Yep.
Hopefully next week, if they're up for it.
Let's get this miserable weather out. We're actually recording this on a Friday for contextual purposes, and it feels like it's been raining for 48 hours.
It's horrible. So yeah, that's it from us. Have a lovely week, and we will see you in the next one.
See you later, guys.
Bye.